Most people over 60 believe they're making a healthy choice when they eat eggs in the morning, and in many ways, they are. Eggs contain some of the highest quality protein the body can receive. They support muscle preservation, energy production, brain function. For decades, they've been recommended as one of the best breakfast foods for aging adults. But there's a problem almost nobody talks about. Not because eggs are unhealthy, but because eating them alone may quietly create stress inside the body that most people never notice, until the effects begin to accumulate. For most of their lives, people never had to think this deeply about breakfast. The body simply adapted. A quick meal in the morning was enough to get through the day, and when you're younger, the body is remarkably forgiving. Digestion is faster, recovery is faster, nutrient absorption is more efficient. Even meals that are incomplete can still feel manageable because the body has enough reserve to compensate. But after 60, something begins to change quietly beneath the surface. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but gradually. The digestive system slows down. The kidneys process metabolic waste less efficiently. Inflammation becomes easier to trigger. And the body starts depending much more heavily on nutritional balance instead of simply nutritional quantity. That distinction matters far more than most people realize, because many adults believe they're eating healthy simply because the food itself is healthy. But the body doesn't judge meals individually, it evaluates systems. And a healthy food inside an incomplete meal can still create unnecessary strain over time. That's the part almost nobody explains, especially when it comes to eggs, because eggs truly are one of the most nutrient-dense foods available. High-quality protein, choline for brain function, vitamin D, essential amino acids. For aging adults trying to preserve muscle and energy, eggs can be incredibly valuable, but the problem begins when the meal stops there. No fiber, no antioxidant protection, no healthy fat supporting absorption, just protein by itself. And at first, nothing feels wrong. That's what makes this so deceptive. The body continues functioning. You still get through the morning. You still believe you're making the right decision. But slowly, subtle signs begin appearing. Energy becomes less stable. Digestion feels heavier. The afternoon fatigue arrives earlier. And many people assume this is simply what aging feels like. But often, the body is reacting to nutritional imbalance that has quietly repeated itself for years. This is where most people misunderstand aging completely. They believe the body becomes weak because of age alone. But many times, the body is simply under-supported. It's trying to operate efficiently with missing pieces. And breakfast is one of the most common places where that happens, especially in adults who are genuinely trying to eat healthier. That's why the next part matters so much. Because once you understand what eggs actually need beside them, the entire breakfast changes. Not through restriction, not through expensive supplements, but through 3 simple additions most people already have in their kitchen. And the first one begins helping the body only minutes after the meal is finished. Here's what most people never realize about nutrition after 60. The body does not process nutrients individually. It processes relationships. Every nutrient depends on another nutrient to function correctly. Protein depends on digestive balance. Fat-soluble vitamins depend on absorption pathways. And cholesterol depends heavily on the environment surrounding digestion itself. That changes everything about how breakfast should work inside the aging body. Because when eggs are eaten alone, the body is forced to process powerful nutrients without the support systems they were designed to work with. And the first system affected by that imbalance is often the kidneys. Every time the body breaks down protein, it produces nitrogen waste. That waste must be filtered and removed through the kidneys. When people are younger, the kidneys usually handle this process very efficiently. But after 60, filtration capacity naturally begins to slow down. Not because the kidneys are failing, but because aging changes how much reserve the body has available. And when protein arrives without fiber, digestion accelerates too quickly. Nitrogen waste builds faster. The bloodstream becomes more metabolically active, and the kidneys absorb the entire workload alone. That's one of the reasons many adults feel unusually heavy or fatigued after high-protein meals. Even when the meal itself seems healthy, the body is processing more stress than people realize, quietly, without obvious warning. But kidney strain is only one piece of this. The deeper issue involves absorption. Because eggs contain several nutrients that are extremely valuable for aging adults. Vitamin D, vitamin A, lutein, zeaxanthin. Compounds strongly connected to brain health, immune support, vision, and long-term cellular protection. But here's the hidden problem. Many of these nutrients are fat-soluble, which means the body cannot properly absorb them without healthy fat present in the same meal. Without that absorption pathway, a significant portion of those nutrients simply passes through the digestive system unused. The body receives only partial benefit from food that should have been fully nourishing. That's the difference between eating healthy food and actually absorbing healthy food. And after 60, that distinction matters more every year, because the aging body becomes less forgiving of nutritional gaps, less efficient, more dependent on support. That's why many people can eat what appears to be a healthy breakfast and still experience low energy, inflammation, brain fog, or afternoon fatigue later in the day. The issue is not always the food itself. Sometimes the issue is what the food is missing. And there's one specific addition that changes this process almost immediately inside the body. Not a supplement, not a medication. A simple food most people already have in their kitchen. And once it's added beside eggs, nutrient absorption changes dramatically. The first food that changes how eggs behave inside the body after 60 is healthy fat. And surprisingly, most people believe eggs already contain enough fat on their own. But that's not entirely true. Eggs contain some fat naturally, but not always the right balance needed to fully support absorption, inflammation control, and cardiovascular stability in the aging body. That's why what's added beside the eggs matters so much, especially after 60. Because healthy fats do far more than people realize. They slow digestion gently. They reduce metabolic stress. They improve nutrient absorption. And perhaps most importantly, they help stabilize energy after the meal instead of creating sudden crashes later in the day. That's one reason many adults feel surprisingly tired after breakfast. The meal digests too aggressively. Blood sugar becomes unstable. The nervous system becomes overstimulated, and energy drops much faster than it should. But when the body receives supportive fats alongside protein, the entire digestive process becomes calmer, slower, more efficient. The body begins absorbing nutrients instead of simply processing them. That difference matters enormously with age, because after 60, the body becomes much more sensitive to inflammatory stress. Even small imbalances repeated every day can slowly affect energy, circulation, mental clarity, and recovery. That's why certain traditional breakfasts work so well for older generations without people fully understanding why. The meals were balanced naturally. Eggs were rarely eaten completely alone. There was usually something beside them supporting digestion. Olive oil, avocado, nuts, seeds, even small amounts made a difference. And modern research is beginning to confirm what many traditional eating patterns already understood decades ago. The body functions best when nutrients work together, not separately. That's especially true for vitamin absorption, because eggs contain nutrients like vitamin D and vitamin A, which require dietary fat to be properly absorbed and transported through the body. Without enough supportive fat, absorption becomes less efficient. The nutrients are present, but the body struggles to fully use them. And after 60, Efficiency matters more than quantity. That's one of the biggest misunderstandings in modern nutrition. People focus entirely on what they eat, but longevity often depends more on what the body can actually absorb. That's why even adding something as simple as avocado beside eggs can completely change how the body responds to the meal. Energy becomes steadier, digestion feels lighter, and many people notice they stay satisfied much longer without the heavy crash later in the morning. But healthy fats alone are still not enough, because there's another missing piece that becomes even more important for the kidneys: digestion and long-term inflammation after 60. And most adults are dangerously low in it without realizing. One of the biggest mistakes many adults make after 60 is focusing only on protein while completely overlooking fiber. And over time, that imbalance quietly changes how the entire digestive system behaves. Because fiber does much more than help digestion. It regulates absorption. It slows metabolic stress. It stabilizes blood sugar, and it helps remove excess waste from the body more efficiently. That becomes incredibly important after 60, especially when high-protein foods like eggs are eaten regularly. Because without enough fiber present in the meal, digestion often becomes too concentrated. Protein breaks down rapidly, waste products accumulate faster, and the digestive system loses much of the balance it depends on to stay calm and efficient. That's one reason so many adults experience bloating, heaviness, or afternoon fatigue after meals that technically appear healthy. The food itself is not necessarily the problem. The meal is simply incomplete, and the body feels that imbalance immediately, especially the gut. Because the digestive system after 60 becomes far more sensitive to inflammatory stress than most people realize. The microbiome changes, digestive enzymes decline, stomach acid production often decreases, and the body gradually becomes less efficient at extracting nutrients from food. That means meals must become more supportive, not just more restrictive. But unfortunately, many adults do the opposite. They simplify breakfast too aggressively. Eggs only, protein only, low carbohydrate, very little plant fiber. And over time, the digestive system begins losing flexibility. That's when energy becomes inconsistent, inflammation becomes more noticeable, and recovery becomes slower than it used to be. But adding fiber beside eggs changes this process dramatically. Because fiber slows digestion gently, it creates steadier absorption, it supports the gut microbiome, and it reduces how aggressively the body has to process the meal all at once. That creates a calmer internal environment, especially for the kidneys, the digestive system, and blood sugar stability. And the most interesting part is this: the amount of fiber needed is often surprisingly small. Sometimes just berries, vegetables, oats, or whole grain toast beside the eggs can completely change how the meal feels afterward. Many people notice more stable energy, lighter digestion, and fewer cravings later in the day. Not because the meal became smaller, but because the body became more supported. That's one of the hidden truths about aging. The body is constantly adapting, constantly compensating, constantly trying to maintain balance, but after 60, it needs more support to do that successfully. And there's one final missing piece most people still overlook completely: a protective layer that helps reduce oxidation, inflammation, and cellular stress after meals. And without it, even healthy foods can create more internal strain than people realize. The final piece most people overlook after 60 is antioxidant protection. And this may be one of the most important parts of the entire conversation, because every time the body processes food, a small amount of oxidative stress is naturally created. That process is completely normal. The body is designed to handle it. But after 60, recovery becomes slower. inflammation becomes easier to trigger, and oxidative stress becomes much harder for the body to neutralize efficiently. That's why meals that once felt harmless decades ago may now create more internal stress than people realize. Quietly, gradually, without obvious symptoms in the beginning. And this is especially important with foods rich in protein and fat, including eggs. Not because eggs are dangerous, but because nutrient metabolism always creates byproducts the body must manage carefully. That's where antioxidants become incredibly valuable. They help stabilize the internal environment after digestion, they reduce inflammatory pressure, and they help protect blood vessels, cells, and tissues from excessive oxidative strain over time. That protection becomes more important every year after 60, especially for circulation, brain health, joint comfort, and long-term energy production. But unfortunately, many breakfasts contain almost no antioxidant support at all. Just eggs, coffee, maybe toast. Very little color, very little plant protection. And over time, the body slowly loses some of its ability to recover efficiently from repeated inflammatory stress. That's why simple additions beside eggs can make such a powerful difference. Tomatoes, spinach, blueberries, herbs. Even small amounts provide compounds the body recognizes immediately. Natural protective signals that help calm the inflammatory response after meals. And what's fascinating is this. Many traditional cultures naturally combined these foods together long before modern nutrition science understood why they worked. Eggs with vegetables. Eggs cooked in olive oil. Fresh herbs beside protein-rich meals. The body responded better because the meals were complete, balanced, protective, supportive. That's the real hidden lesson most people miss about nutrition after 60. Longevity is not usually built through extreme diets. It's built through reducing unnecessary stress on the body, day after day, meal after meal. Small, supportive decisions repeated consistently over time. That's what changes aging, not perfection, support. And once people understand this, breakfast often becomes one of the easiest places to begin helping the body recover energy, stabilize inflammation, and feel stronger again, especially when the body finally receives the support it has quietly needed for years. So what does a more supportive breakfast actually look like after 60? Surprisingly, it's often much simpler than people expect. Not a strict diet, not complicated meal planning, and certainly not expensive supplements, usually. It's just about creating a more complete environment around the food the body is already trying to use. Instead of eating eggs completely alone, the body benefits when the meal includes support systems beside them. Healthy fats, fiber, antioxidant protection, not in extreme amounts. Just enough to help digestion remain stable, calm, and efficient. For some people, that may look like eggs cooked gently in olive oil with spinach beside them. For others, eggs with avocado and berries, even something as simple as adding tomatoes, oats, walnuts, or whole grain toast can begin changing how the body responds to breakfast over time. The goal is not perfection. The goal is support. Because after 60, the body becomes much more responsive to consistency than intensity. Small supportive habits repeated every day often matter far more than dramatic short-term changes. That's one of the biggest misconceptions about healthy aging. People believe the body stops responding with age, but many times, the body is still responding very clearly. It simply responds more slowly, more quietly, and more consistently over time. That's why gentle supportive changes often create the most sustainable improvements in energy, digestion, mental clarity, and long-term recovery. Not overnight, but gradually. And in many cases, those improvements begin with something as ordinary as breakfast, a meal most people never think twice about, until the body finally begins receiving what it needed all along. And if you've made it this far into the video, take a moment and let me know in the comments. What do you usually eat with eggs in the morning? And where are you watching from today? I always enjoy hearing from you. One of the most dangerous beliefs people carry into aging is the idea that decline is automatic. That once energy fades, once inflammation appears, once digestion changes, the body simply has no choice but to continue getting weaker year after year. But biology is often more adaptable than people realize, especially when the body finally receives the support it has been missing consistently over time. That's why small daily habits matter so much after 60. Not because they create dramatic overnight transformation, but because the body is always listening, always adapting, always responding to the environment it experiences every single day. And many adults are surprised by how different they begin to feel once meals become more balanced, supportive, and easier for the body to process efficiently. More stable energy, clearer thinking, better digestion, less heaviness after meals. Not because the body suddenly became younger, but because it finally stopped working against unnecessary stress over and over again. That's one of the hidden truths about healthy aging. Longevity is rarely built through extreme decisions. It's usually built through reducing friction inside the body consistently over time, supporting recovery, supporting circulation, supporting digestion, supporting the systems quietly working every moment to keep the body alive and functioning well. And often, the process begins with something as simple as breakfast. So the next time you eat eggs in the morning, remember this: the goal is not to fear food. The goal is to help the body use food more efficiently, more completely, more supportively, because even after 60, the body is still trying to heal, recover, and adapt every single day. And when people finally begin supporting those systems properly, the changes are often much greater than they expected. If you found this video helpful, make sure to subscribe to the Aging Code for more simple health insights designed specifically for healthy aging. And if you enjoyed this conversation, you may also want to watch the next video on your screen now. It explains another hidden daily habit that quietly increases inflammation after 60 and what the body actually needs instead. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.